"What are you doing in my house?" I said louder than I meant to. My voice echoed down the hallway like it belonged to someone else. Vincent jerked back, dropping the flathead screwdriver with a sharp clatter. Mallory spun around, one hand still braced against the office door, which was already cracked open at the frame. Her expression flickered shock calculation, then something colder. I took one slow step forward, my heels brushing over scuff marks on the tile. I thought your flight was last night," Vincent stammered. "It was this morning," I said, eyes never leaving the safe they'd just pulled halfway out from behind the desk. Storms canceled it. Neither of them moved. I could still hear the truck's engine idling outside. I glanced over my shoulder as I walked to the front of the house. My dining table was strapped to the side of the open truck wrapped in plastic. The bookshelf from the den sat behind it, and on top, balanced carelessly, was the hand-carved sideboard my father built in 1969. I turned back toward the hallway. Mallory stepped aside as I passed her. I walked into the office. The carpet was peeled back. The safe pulled out at an angle, the keypad smeared with something, maybe oil, maybe fingerprints. Vincent stood frozen at the doorway. "I was going to call you," he said. I didn't answer. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, scrolling until I found Florence's name. Mallory tried to speak, but I raised one hand. "Don't," I said flat. "Not right now." The line rang. The house felt different, like the walls had heard everything before I had. I stood in silence, the phone pressed to my ear, my eyes locked on the safe that should never have been touched. Florence answered on the second ring. I didn't need to explain. "Can you come over?" I said. "Right now." Then I turned back to them, still standing in the hallway, like children caught with their hands in the drawer. Mallory was the first to speak once Florence arrived and settled in the living room. Her voice was rehearsed, almost sweet. "We didn't think you'd be back so soon. We thought you were settling in Savannah for a while." "For a while," I echoed. She hesitated. "We just assumed, with the way things were going, you'd want something easier, quieter. You'd mentioned feeling tired, like the house was too much." "I said I was tired after the surgery," I replied, walking past her. "That was 3 months ago." Vincent finally stepped in. "We weren't stealing. We were preparing." I paused in the hallway. "Preparing what?" He glanced at Mallory, then back at me, hands shoved into his pockets. "You said we should think about being closer. We thought this made sense." The china hutch in the dining room was bare. I opened one drawer. It held a single envelope with my return address still printed on it. The rest was empty. I moved through the house in silence. The linen closet was half cleared. The guest room looked like someone had tried to pack in a hurry, clothes folded, but out of place. My bedroom door was ajar. I didn't go in yet. In the kitchen, I found it. A stack of papers laid out neatly on the table, as if waiting for my signature. Vincent stood behind me. "We were going to talk to you about it. We just didn't want to overwhelm you before your trip. You typed my name on a transfer of ownership form," I said. Mallory's voice tightened. "You weren't supposed to find it like this." "No," I agreed, tapping the edge of the page. "I wasn't." Vincent looked away. "I thought you said you were fine with us moving closer." I turned to face him. "Closer?" My voice didn't rise. "You're not moving closer, Vincent. You're moving me out." He looked like a boy, then confused, caught, ashamed, but not enough to take it back. I lifted the paperwork, folded it, and walked it to the shredder in my office. The machine hummed as the pages disappeared. When I turned back around, I saw the door to my bedroom was now open. I sat at the kitchen table with my old red notebook open, flipping through every legal document I'd kept since Harold passed. Somewhere near the back was a copy of the limited power of attorney I'd signed 3 months ago, just before my gallbladder surgery. Short-term limited medical decisions only. That's what I was told. I called Gilbert, my lawyer of 22 years, and told him I needed to confirm something. His voice was calm, but I could hear the tension tighten when I mentioned Vincent and the house. "You did the right thing," he said. "The revocation you filed came through 10 days ago. If you hadn't sent it, they could have done a lot more than just empty your china cabinet." I stared out the window as he spoke. 10 days. 10 days between safety and losing everything. My fingers closed slowly around the phone as he walked me through what could have happened. A sale, a refinance, even legal eviction if they'd timed it right. After the call, I found Mallory in the garage pretending to be organizing the mess they'd made. She didn't look surprised when I brought it up. "We were just trying to help you downsize," she said, without turning around. "That's not help," I said. "That's a decision you made without me." She scoffed. "You've been overwhelmed. This place is too much. You leave the porch light on all night. Your calendar's weeks behind." Vincent appeared in the doorway, holding 2 mismatched coffee mugs like peace offerings. "We didn't mean to upset you. We just thought—" "No," I interrupted. "You didn't think, or if you did, it was about yourselves." He looked down, then quietly added, "That house is too much for one person." I stepped toward him. "It was the right size for you to steal from." Neither of them responded. I walked past them both back into the house. In my office, the safe was still open. I hadn't checked it yet. I knelt down and turned the handle. The inside was emptier than I remembered. I started in the guest room, where the boxes were already half-packed. My spare linens framed family photos, and the little clock from Harold's nightstand were stacked together like clearance items at a garage sale. I opened each box and made note of what was missing. Not everything was gone, but enough had been touched that I couldn't tell what I'd chosen to keep anymore. In the hallway closet, the seasonal decorations had been rummaged through, half the Easter box gone, the Christmas lights tangled and tossed aside. The trunk from the attic, the one with my mother's letters and my children's school drawings, wasn't there. I hadn't moved it. No one else should have. When I reached my bedroom, I hesitated at the door. The jewelry box on my dresser, the one Florence helped me polish each spring, was gone. Not even a smudge left behind. My wedding band was in there. So was the pearl pin from my retirement party, and the charm bracelet Vincent gave me when he was 12. I stood there a long time just looking at the empty space. I called the locksmith, then Florence. She answered on the first ring. "I'm on my way," she said. "No questions." She arrived with a tote bag and her old quilt, same one she always brought when Harold was sick, and I didn't want to be alone. We didn't talk much as the locks were changed. She watched the door while I started a new notebook. Every room, every item, one line at a time. Florence sat beside me while I wrote. "You always said Mallory had that hungry look," she murmured. I nodded, lips pressed together. She didn't marry Vincent. She married what she thought he'd inherit. By midnight, the house was quiet again. The new locks clicked firm into place. I walked the rooms one last time, checking windows, doors, corners. The emptiness felt different now, like I'd stepped out of something I hadn't realized I was inside. In the morning, I planned to find out exactly where my things had gone. The moving company invoice had a local address printed near the bottom, next to a scribbled confirmation number. I didn't bother calling. I just drove there after breakfast. Florence insisting I take her car since mine hadn't been returned yet. The facility sat just off the highway. Row after row of metal doors painted the same dull beige. The clerk looked up my name, then paused. "It's under Vincent Mercer," he said. "Unit 204. I nodded. He handed me a clipboard and opened the gate. When I lifted the roll-up door, the first thing I saw was my living room sliced apart and stacked like a puzzle. My framed artwork leaned against the far wall. My crystal punch bowl, the one I'd only used 3 times, was packed in bubble wrap with a neon orange sticker on it, $40. A handwritten sign leaned on the desk chair, vintage solid wood, 1960s. They hadn't just moved my things. They'd priced them. I walked slowly, touching nothing yet. Behind an old dresser, something caught the light. I knelt, reached back, and pulled out the velvet case I hadn't seen in years. Inside, Harold's Army medals rested exactly where he'd left them. Mallory probably hadn't recognized what they were. Or maybe she had, and just didn't care. I spent the next hour methodically repacking everything into Florence's car. A facility staff member came out to check the ID on the invoice. I showed him the list and my license. He nodded, quiet and sympathetic. At the front office, I handed the clipboard back. "Inventory returned," I said, scribbling my name in the empty space below Vincent's. "And no, he won't be needing this space anymore." The clerk didn't argue. I left the unit open behind me. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the house looked smaller somehow, but mine again. I unloaded the boxes myself, one by one. That night, I unpacked the medals, first set them on the desk, where Harold used to sort mail, and looked at them until the sun went down. In the morning, I asked Vincent to meet me for coffee. We met at the little diner off Mill Street, the one with chipped mugs and a waitress who never needed to ask my order. Vincent arrived 5 minutes late, shoulders hunched like a schoolboy waiting outside the principal's office. He didn't hug me, just sat down and asked if I wanted anything. I said I'd already ordered. He glanced around, uncomfortable. "I didn't think you'd want to talk." "You thought right," I said. "But I'm doing it anyway." He looked down at his hands. "Mallory thought it would be best if we helped you transition into something more manageable." "I didn't ask for help," I said. He didn't argue. Just said, "We didn't mean to hurt you." I reached into my bag and pulled out a single sheet neatly folded. I laid it between us without speaking. He hesitated before unfolding it. It was a simple spreadsheet, itemized with dates and amounts, tuition payments, his wedding catering deposit, the $14,000 loan he needed to get back on his feet. All of it in black and white. "You built your future on my sacrifices," I said quietly, and then tried to take the last thing I had left. His face changed, then not defiant, not angry, just tired. "I didn't know how to stop it," he said. "Mallory, she had all these plans. She said we could renovate, sell later, maybe even use part of the equity to—" He stopped himself. "So the plan was never just about moving closer." He shook his head slowly. "It was just going to be easier." I nodded. "Easier for you." We didn't speak for a while. Our coffee cooled between us. The waitress came by and topped off my cup, ignored his. He looked like he wanted to say something more, but didn't. I stood to leave. "You should know," I said before turning. "The safe was nearly empty when I opened it." His eyes met mine, confused. "It wasn't us," he said. I didn't answer. I just walked out, wondering what else I hadn't yet uncovered. The following Monday, I sat in Gilbert's office with a folder in my lap and a knot in my chest. He read everything carefully, pausing only to underline a few terms and clarify the wording of the trust. When he looked up, he didn't ask why. He just said, "Let's protect what's yours." By the end of the appointment, the house was officially held in a private living trust one with no listed beneficiaries. Not Vincent. Not anyone. It would sit in my name alone, shielded and quiet, until I decided otherwise. I also filed for a civil order of no contact regarding the property. Not a restraining order exactly, but a legal wall they couldn't climb. Florence drove me home and helped carry the papers inside. She didn't speak much until we sat with tea in the sunroom. "I'm not trying to punish him," I said, watching the light fall against the hardwood floors. "I'm protecting what's mine." Florence didn't nod. She didn't need to. That night I opened my inbox to a wall of words. Mallory had written a letter so polished I could almost hear the ice in it. She claimed miscommunication, that she had misread the legal situation, and that any consequences on my part would be unfair and damaging to the family's reputation. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I clicked reply and typed one line. "You chose to treat me as disposable. Now I've accepted the role, just not the outcome." I hit send, then blocked the address. The next morning, I reviewed the lockbox at the bank and moved a few more documents into secure storage. Everything felt a little lighter after that, like someone had finally turned off the gaslight that had been humming low and steady for months. Vincent didn't call. Neither did anyone else from their side. And for the first time in weeks, I opened the front door without checking over my shoulder. I stepped outside with a broom in my hand and began to sweep the porch clean. It was late afternoon when I heard the knock. Not the doorbell, just a soft, uneven knock. I looked through the side window and saw Vincent standing there alone, holding something in both hands. I opened the door but didn't step aside. He looked thinner than I remembered. Paler, too. In his hands was the jewelry box, the one I'd thought was gone for good. He held it out. I found it in Mallory's storage unit. She took it without telling me. His voice broke around the edges. She's gone. She left last week. Went to stay with her sister in Tampa. I didn't say anything. Just looked down at the box. The latch was slightly bent, but it was intact. He looked past me toward the hallway behind my shoulder. I don't know what to do now, he said. I met his eyes. I'm not angry anymore, I said quietly. But I'm not the place you come back to. His shoulders fell a little. He nodded, placed the box carefully on the entry table, and stepped back. Thank you, he said, voice barely above a whisper. I closed the door without another word. I stood there for a moment, hand resting on the edge of the box, staring at it like it might vanish if I blinked. Inside were my bracelets, the pearl pin, Harold's cufflinks, and a few odd bits I hadn't even remembered missing. It was heavier than I expected. Not the box itself, but the realization of what it represented. Everything he'd nearly taken. Everything I'd almost let slip by. I carried it to the back room and set it on Harold's desk beside the medals. The sun was low now, shadows stretching long across the floor. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I walked back to the front of the house, turned the bolt in the door, and slid the chain across. The click echoed softly through the quiet. Then I opened the linen closet and began sorting what was left. The quiet used to unnerve me. It crept in at night and sat heavy in the corners. But now, weeks later, it feels different, cleaner, less expectant. The kind of quiet that doesn't need filling. I spent a Saturday sanding down Harold's old desk. The stain had faded, and the surface bore years of coffee rings and pencil marks. I worked slowly, layer by layer, until the grain reappeared, and the wood felt smooth beneath my hands. When I finished, I placed his medals in the top drawer and tucked a small notebook beside them. The basil plant I potted sits on the kitchen sill, now reaching toward the morning light. I water it every other day, and the smell reminds me that some things still grow even after too much neglect. Florence drops off library books each Friday. She doesn't linger, just leaves a fresh stack on the porch and takes the old ones back with a wink through the screen. We've settled into that rhythm-quiet companionship from across the railing. In the evenings, I sit at Harold's desk and write. Just small things. Bits of memory names of neighbors who've moved away, recipes that never made it into the box. I write about the day Vincent was born. I write about the way Harold used to tap twice on the door frame before leaving a room. I write about the drawer I once filled with notes from a child who used to call me Mama, like it meant something eternal. The house no longer feels like a vault I have to guard. It feels lived in, settled, mine. There are still shadows, of course. Boxes I haven't opened, closets I haven't cleaned, but they don't haunt me anymore. They wait quietly like the rest of the house. That evening I made a pot of tea and sat by the window while the sun dipped behind the tree line. The dishes were done. The porch light stayed off. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel watched. I just felt home. I ordered the plaque online, a small brass sign, nothing flashy. Just clean lettering. Mercer House, Esta 1981. I didn't tell anyone about it. It wasn't for show. It was for me. I installed it one morning just after sunrise. The drill bit slipped a little, but I got it straight in the end. When I stepped back, the words looked settled, like they'd always belonged there. A quiet mark of ownership, not just of the house, but of everything it had carried me through. The new locks turned smoother now. I've oiled the hinges and fixed the latch on the storm door. Every sound feels familiar again. The creak of the floorboards, the tick of the old hallway clock. They don't feel like warnings anymore. They feel like rhythm. My days have grown simpler, but not smaller. I still make tea every afternoon. Still read in the sunroom when the light is soft. Sometimes I let the phone ring without answering. Sometimes I turn it off entirely. I no longer keep watch over my things like someone expecting to be robbed. The safe stays closed, but not out of fear. Just habit. The house is no longer a fortress. It's just my place where I move without explaining where I rest, without apology. The neighbors wave more now. Not out of curiosity, just recognition. I think they can feel the shift even if they don't know the details. The photo of Harold and me sits in the entryway again beside the bowl for keys and mail. I dust it once a week. Sometimes I talk to it without thinking. I've made no promises about what happens next. No declarations, no new chapters to announce. Just small routines chosen by me, kept by me. When I step over the threshold now, whether coming or going, I feel something solid underfoot. Not just the wood or the stone, something earned. The air feels stiller here, but not stuck, just peaceful. Like I've finally arrived in a life no one else gets to rewrite.